My wife cheated with my boss while I was paying off our mortgage, so I walked away and took everything she ever owned. I'm a 32-year-old guy, and I thought my marriage was a partnership. I'd always been the responsible one, working late nights, budgeting every penny, and keeping a tight grip on our finances, because I believed building a stable life meant sacrifice. Claire, my wife, was the opposite, vibrant, ambitious, and impossibly charming. When we finally signed the papers for our first home, I felt this quiet, almost private sense of pride. Every mortgage payment, every extra shift, every late weekend spent reviewing budgets felt worth it because it was our future, or at least that's what I thought. The house smelled faintly of fresh paint and pine from the new floors, and sunlight spilled through the living room windows, glinting off the polished countertops. Claire bounced around the kitchen, pinching the corner of a decorative rug and laughing. "I'm thinking we could redo the bedroom in soft gray with those gold accents," she said, eyes sparkling. I nodded, smiling, but internally I cringed. Gold accents were not exactly in our budget. "Yeah, sure. Soft gray sounds good," I murmured, running a hand through my hair, telling myself it was fine. "It's just decoration," I reasoned. No big deal. We had plans, vacations sketched out on napkins, weekend projects pinned to the fridge, dreams whispered over coffee before the sun even rose. Claire's excitement was contagious. She'd talk about furniture, kitchen upgrades, maybe even a little landscaping someday. I'd listen, pretending I didn't notice the expensive tastes sneaking into every suggestion. But I told myself it was normal, just personality differences. I didn't see the cracks yet, just the shimmer of hope, and honestly, it was easy to ignore the small frictions when everything felt so... New evenings settled over the neighborhood, the smell of wet earth after a light drizzle filling the air. Claire laughed again, twirling by the living room window. I leaned back against the couch, thinking this was it. Our life built together, each brick a promise. But something in her smile felt slightly different that day, almost like she was hiding something behind the sparkle. I shook the thought away. I didn't know it yet, but this was just the calm before a storm that would hit harder than I could imagine. I started noticing the little things first, the kind of things that make your stomach twist, but you convince yourself it's nothing. Claire was texting late at night more often, whispering in the kitchen when I was supposed to be asleep, leaving her phone face down like she was hiding something. "Work calls," she'd say with a tired smile if I asked, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust her. I told myself I was being paranoid, but it wasn't just the texts. She began avoiding conversations about our finances, brushing off my questions about the mortgage and bills with a casual, "Don't worry, I got it." It wasn't a lie exactly, but it felt off. Like there was a wall being built between us, brick by brick. I started noticing the way she laughed a little too much at her phone, the way she would disappear into another room when a message came through, and the way I felt an unfamiliar ache in my chest every time I glanced at her. One Thursday evening, I asked casually over dinner, "You've got a lot of late nights at work this week, huh?" She shrugged, picking at her salad. "Yeah, just a few deadlines. Nothing major." "Don't stress." I nodded, forcing a laugh, but my gut told me otherwise. And then there was Richard, my boss. He started commenting on how well Claire handled things, calling her clever, smart, capable. At first, I laughed it off as harmless flattery. It's just him being polite, I told myself. But deep down, a small, gnawing unease began to settle in my stomach, like the first cold wind before a storm. Some nights, I lay awake on the couch, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was imagining it all. Every laugh, every whisper, every unexplained outing, my mind replayed them like a broken record. I wanted to brush it off, wanted to cling to the life we were building. But the signs were there, glaring at me, whispering that something was wrong. And that night when I heard her phone buzz and she slipped out to the balcony with a smile I didn't recognize, I felt a knot tighten in my chest, the kind that tells you the calm is over, and the real trouble is just beginning. By this point, the distance between us wasn't just emotional, it felt physical too. Claire began avoiding conversations that mattered, claiming stress from work, appointments, or just needing some space. She would disappear for hours into the bedroom or her home office, door closed, phone in hand, and I would sit in the living room sipping lukewarm coffee, feeling more invisible than ever in the home we built together. The walls seemed to close in, the hum of the refrigerator louder than usual, the soft creak of the floorboards under my own feet painfully noticeable. I tried talking to her, gently at first. Hey, is everything okay? You've seemed distant lately. She sighed and rolled her eyes, brushing it off. I'm fine, really. You worry too much. But her eyes flicked to her phone mid-sentence, a hesitation I couldn't ignore. I hated myself for noticing, hated that I was already suspecting her. I wanted to believe in us, in the life we promised each other. It wasn't just the secrecy, it was the little lies that slowly piled up. She'd say she was at the gym, but I noticed the charges on our shared credit card. Fancy dinners, expensive drinks, receipts from places I didn't recognize. I confronted her once, trying to keep my voice steady. Claire, these charges. They don't look like the gym. She smiled, almost mockingly. Oh, that? Just a few work dinners. You know how it is. I nodded, but my gut screamed. Even at work, my focus began to slip. Richard's compliments about Claire, his subtle jokes, his offhand comments, were now threaded with an unease I couldn't shake. My mornings felt heavy. Coffee tasted bitter, and the sunlight streaming through my office window couldn't lift the weight in my chest. Nights were worse. Lying beside her, pretending everything was normal, I felt the warmth of our shared bed turn cold. And then came the night I found her phone face down again, buzzing insistently, and this time she didn't even glance at me before stepping out to answer it in the kitchen. The way she laughed softly, the way her eyes sparkled at something I couldn't see, it wasn't mine. My chest tightened, the ache in my gut sharpened, and I realized with a sinking clarity that someone was coming between us. I just didn't know how deep it went. I'll never forget the night I stumbled onto the first undeniable hint. I was tidying up the office, one of the few quiet moments in my otherwise chaotic life, when I noticed an email open on Claire's laptop. It wasn't meant for me, obviously, but the subject line alone made my stomach drop. Can't wait to see you tonight. I froze, heart hammering, staring at her name in the sender line. Richard, my boss, the man I'd trusted for years, who always shook my hand with a smile and offered career advice. I didn't know whether to close the laptop and pretend I hadn't seen it or dive into my worst fears. My hands trembled as I scrolled just enough to read a few lines, flirty, intimate words that didn't belong in the context of work friends. I swallowed hard, telling myself it had to be a misunderstanding. Maybe it was about work. No, it wasn't. The warmth I felt for Claire turned icy, a creeping dread settling over my chest. Later that evening, I tried to confront her casually. Hey, you've been spending a lot of time with Richard lately, huh? I forced my voice to sound light, joking almost. She laughed, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Oh, come on, it's just work. You're imagining things. Her smile didn't reach her eyes this time. There was a flicker of something. Nervous? Guilty? That made me bite my tongue. We sat in the living room, the hum of the fridge louder than usual, the smell of Claire's perfume clinging to the air. I wanted to press further, demand the truth, but a small voice inside me whispered, "Not yet. Be patient." The seed of suspicion had been planted, and now it was sprouting in every glance, every laugh, every casual touch that suddenly seemed loaded with secrets. That night, I lay awake on the couch, staring at the ceiling, trying to tell myself I was imagining it. But I couldn't shake the image of the email, the words, the casual, intimate tone that didn't belong in a marriage built on trust. And somewhere deep down, a tiny, terrified part of me whispered, maybe this is bigger than I thought. I wish I could say I was prepared, but nothing could have braced me for the moment everything fell apart. One Saturday, I stayed late at the office finishing reports. When I got home, the house was too quiet, too neat. Claire's phone buzzed on the counter, a name flashing that made my chest seize. Richard. My hands shook as I picked it up, not to snoop, not really, but I couldn't stop myself. And there it was. Messages, photos, dates, intimate jokes between them that left no room for doubt. They weren't just flirty, they were together, behind my back, while I slaved away paying the mortgage, building the life we dreamed of. I felt the air in the room thicken, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear my own thoughts. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone, to shake Claire and demand an explanation. But when she walked in, smiling like nothing was wrong, it felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "Hey, honey, dinner's ready," she said casually, her tone like she was expecting me to be perfectly normal. My voice caught in my throat. "Claire, what is this?" I showed her the screen, every shaky finger pointing at the proof. She froze for a moment, a flicker of panic flashing across her face, then a small, practiced smile. "Oh, that? It's nothing. Just jokes. Work stuff. Don't overthink it," she said, her tone too calm, too controlled. My chest tightened, and for a moment I felt suspended, like the ground had dropped from beneath me. How could the woman I trusted, the one I built this life with, treat me like I was invisible while laughing and texting someone else behind my back? I sat on the edge of the couch, staring at the phone, at her, at our home that suddenly felt like a cage. Anger, betrayal, heartbreak, they collided inside me, raw and suffocating. I wanted answers, but I knew Claire wouldn't give them. And in that moment, as I watched her move through our home with a casualness that made me sick, I realized I wasn't just heartbroken. I was in a war I didn't know how to fight yet. And the worst part? I wasn't even at the bottom of this storm. Not yet. I thought discovering the affair was bad enough. I thought betrayal was measured in lies and stolen intimacy. I was wrong. A week later, while going through our joint account to reconcile some bills, I noticed something off. Claire had been secretly siphoning money, transferring chunks from our savings into accounts I didn't recognize. At first I froze, staring at the numbers like they were a cruel hallucination. She had been draining our hard-earned money while I slaved away paying off the mortgage. Every sacrifice, every extra shift, every late night, tainted. I confronted her, hands shaking, heart hammering like a drum in my chest. "Claire, what is this? These transfers, these charges. What is going on?" She laughed, not nervously, not regretfully, but the kind of laugh that made my stomach twist. "Oh, that? It's just..." I needed some flexibility. "You wouldn't understand." Her voice was casual, almost patronizing. I felt my chest tighten, fury mixing with disbelief. The woman I'd trusted with my heart and my finances was using me, laughing at me silently, thinking I'd never notice. It wasn't just money, it was calculated. Luxury dinners, shopping sprees, weekend getaways paid with our combined savings. I realized then that Claire's betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. I felt sick, rage bubbling beneath the surface, but also a strange clarity. This wasn't just a personal heartbreak anymore. It was a battle over everything I'd worked for. The house felt heavier, the walls closing in. I could smell the faint perfume lingering in rooms she'd walked through, taste the bitterness of betrayal in every sip of coffee. I sat at the kitchen table, phone in hand, staring at spreadsheets, receipts, and transfer confirmations. The weight of it pressed down, but in the corner of my mind a dangerous thought formed. If she wants a war, I'll play by the rules. I'll win. I just need to wait. That night, as Claire laughed on a call with someone I didn't see, I realized the true depth of her deceit. And for the first time I understood, leaving wasn't enough. I needed a plan. And the storm was only just beginning. I've never felt so small, so humiliated, and so powerless all at once. I thought betrayal was about lies in the bedroom, stolen kisses in secret. I was wrong. It turned out the full extent of Claire and Richard's audacity didn't stop at the house or our finances. It spilled into my professional life. One afternoon at work, Richard cornered me in the break room, his smile infuriatingly calm. "You've been acting weird lately. Hope everything's okay at home," he said, voice dripping with mock concern. I wanted to spit venom, wanted to scream at him for violating every line of trust, but I had nothing. Claire sided with him when I confronted her that evening, her eyes cold and unyielding. "You're overreacting. Stop embarrassing me," she said, leaning against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. I felt like a fool, humiliated, mocked, and betrayed on every front. Friends who knew about the affair whispered behind my back. Some subtly blamed me, some avoided me altogether. Every corner of my world seemed to turn against me. I wandered our home like a ghost, every familiar sound, the hum of the fridge, the creak of the floors, reminding me of how alone I was. I remember sitting on the edge of the couch late at night, staring at the ceiling, chest tight, thoughts spinning. I felt like I'd fallen into a pit I couldn't climb out of. Every plan I had, every dream I'd built with Claire, every sacrifice for our mortgage, it felt worthless. Rage mixed with despair, and I realized something terrifying. The person I loved, the person I trusted the most, was working against me. And I didn't know how to stop it. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep properly. The laughter and secretive whispers I caught between them replayed in my head like a cruel soundtrack. And somewhere deep inside, a small, dangerous part of me whispered, "You're not going to let this end like this, are you?" But I was too exhausted, too shattered to act. I had hit rock bottom, and for the first time, I truly understood what hopelessness felt like. And yet, even in that darkness, a thought lingered. Maybe the storm wasn't over, and maybe the scales could be tipped. Sitting in the quiet of the living room one night, I realized I couldn't stay trapped in despair any longer. Rock bottom had shown me just how much power Claire had been quietly stealing from me, and I knew the only way out was to take back control. I started methodically, quietly gathering every piece of evidence I could, screenshots of messages, copies of bank statements, credit card receipts, even small contracts showing how much I'd contributed to the mortgage. Every little detail became a weapon in my mind, a step toward reclaiming my life. I called a lawyer, scheduling meetings in secrecy, explaining the situation without revealing my strategy to Claire. They advised me carefully, and for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of empowerment. I wasn't just a victim, I could fight back. My apartment, once a place of heartbreak and humiliation, became my war room. Late nights were spent poring over documents, planning moves, imagining her face when she realized I wasn't the naive fool she thought I was. Even mundane moments, the smell of coffee in the kitchen, the sound of the ceiling fan whirring, felt sharper now, more purposeful. Every time Claire walked past me, laughing at something I couldn't see, my mind raced, cataloging lies, plotting justice. I began mentally rehearsing conversations, imagining how I would reveal the truth when the time was right. There was no room for emotion yet. This was about strategy, precision, and timing. I couldn't let anger dictate my moves. I had to be meticulous. Each discovery, each revelation of her deceit, only solidified my resolve. By the end of that week, I felt a strange calm, a quiet confidence. The power had shifted in my mind, even if not yet in reality. I had a plan, and it was only a matter of time before everything she thought she controlled slipped through her fingers. But I knew the hardest part was still ahead, the confrontation, the taking back, the final reckoning. And as I watched her laugh on the phone that night, oblivious to my meticulous preparation, I smiled to myself, knowing the storm was coming. The day finally came when all my preparation turned into action. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I didn't throw objects across the room. Instead, I moved quietly, deliberately, letting the evidence speak for itself. Every bank statement, every hidden account, every screenshot of messages between Claire and Richard was now documented and in the hands of my lawyer. What she had treated as invisible, hidden treasures was about to become the foundation of her downfall. I remember sitting across from her at the lawyer's office, the fluorescent lights stark and harsh above us. She tried the same casual charm she'd used countless times before, leaning back and saying, "You really don't have to be so dramatic about this." I just smiled, calm and unshakable, and let the documentation slide across the table. Every page told a story of her betrayal, her lies, her greed. She flipped through them, her composure crumbling, lips pressed into a thin line, eyes widening with disbelief. It wasn't about public humiliation. It wasn't about shouting or revenge porn. It was precision. The law was my ally, and every move she thought she'd made in secret was now used against her. By the end of that meeting, every luxury item, every extra savings account, every expensive purchase she thought I'd never notice was legally claimed or returned. I walked out with a quiet satisfaction, my chest full of a controlled, simmering triumph. Driving home, I breathed in the cool evening air, the city lights blurring past, and felt lighter than I had in months. The storm had passed, and I had emerged not broken, but stronger. Claire was left powerless, staring at a life she thought she controlled slipping through her fingers. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I just felt the sweet, quiet satisfaction of justice done, precise and unshakable. And yet, even as I closed the door behind me that night, I knew one thing. This was only the beginning of my freedom. There was still a life to rebuild, lessons to process, and scars to heal. But the power was finally mine. After the legal dust settled, I knew the final step was confronting Claire, face to face, without lawyers, without scripts, just the raw truth. I wanted her to feel the weight of everything she had done, but I also wanted to stay in control. I waited until she came home one evening, her usual confident swagger replaced by a subtle tension I hadn't seen before. The house smelled faintly of her perfume. and the soft hum of the ceiling fan made the silence almost unbearable. "Claire," I said, voice calm but firm, "we need to talk." She looked up, expecting to see the same hurt, the same desperation she'd manipulated me with before. But I wasn't that man anymore. "I know everything," I continued. "The affair, the money, all of it. And the truth is, it doesn't matter what you say now." Her eyes widened slightly, flicking to the evidence I held in my hands, not documents this time, just the quiet certainty in my posture and tone. She tried to deflect, pleading, "Please. I made a mistake." I shook my head, soft but unyielding. "It wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. And now you're facing the consequences." There was no shouting, no anger flaring, just calm, precise, and undeniable. I saw the realization hit her, the understanding that her control had evaporated completely. We stood there for a long moment, silence stretching, filled only by the distant hum of the city outside. I realized something. The confrontation wasn't about anger anymore. It was about closure, about reclaiming the power she had stolen, about marking the end of a chapter that had been toxic from the start. Her attempts to manipulate me fell flat, and for the first time in years, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. And as I walked out of the room that night, leaving her staring at the space I had reclaimed, I understood something vital. Justice doesn't always need to be loud or messy. Sometimes the quiet certainty of standing tall, of knowing your worth, is the most devastating statement of all. After everything, the quiet that settled over my life felt almost foreign. I had spent months in chaos, heartbroken, angry, humiliated, and now, for the first time in years, I could breathe without the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. I moved out of the house we had shared, carrying only the essentials, and for the first time, the space around me felt like my own. The faint smell of morning coffee, the soft hum of the apartment's heater, the sunlight spilling across the hardwood floors. It all felt like freedom, subtle but profound. Friends and family who had watched from the sidelines reached out cautiously, unsure of how to help, but their support meant more than I could ever articulate. Slowly, I rebuilt routines. Early mornings spent jogging, evenings curled up with books I had ignored for years, weekends focused on projects and hobbies I had abandoned. Every small victory, cooking my own meals, managing my finances, reclaiming my time, was a reminder that I was capable, resilient, and in control. The emotional wounds were still there, of course. Sometimes late at night, the memory of Claire's laughter, her phone buzzing, the way she had manipulated me would creep back. But instead of despair, it sparked resolve. I documented lessons learned, not as revenge, but as reminders to never let myself be powerless again. I found clarity in solitude and strength in the small, deliberate steps I took toward independence, and gradually, life began to feel like mine again. I laughed genuinely, made plans without hesitation, and felt a quiet pride in knowing I had survived something that could have destroyed me. The betrayal that had once felt like a weight around my neck had transformed into a lesson, a reminder that I was stronger than I realized. Sitting on the balcony one evening, the city lights flickering below, I breathed deeply, feeling the night air fill my lungs. I realized something. The past was behind me, the storm had passed, and for the first time I was truly free. But freedom, I knew, came with awareness, and the lessons I had learned were far from over. It's been months since I walked away from that life, yet the memories linger like shadows you can't quite shake. I reflect on the betrayal, the heartbreak, and the humiliation, but now with clarity instead of pain. Claire and Richard thought they had won, thought they could manipulate, cheat, and steal without consequence. But ironically, their choices left them empty-handed, exposed, and quietly humiliated in their circles. I don't gloat, but there's a satisfaction in knowing that the truth eventually catches up with those who try to deceive. The house we bought together now belongs entirely to me. I kept every contribution. I made and reclaimed the assets she thought she could claim. Luxury items, hidden accounts, even the small things she had quietly hoarded over the years, all legally and decisively in my hands. Walking through the rooms alone, the smell of polished wood and sunlight spilling through the windows, I finally feel at peace. This is my space, my sanctuary, built on my effort and resilience, not someone else's deception. I often think about the lessons I've learned. Trust cautiously, recognize manipulation, and never let anyone diminish your worth or exploit your kindness. The anger that once consumed me has faded, replaced with quiet confidence and a sense of empowerment I didn't know I was capable of. I can laugh again, plan again, and live without constantly looking over my shoulder. And sometimes, just sometimes, I think about Claire and Richard, the lives they tried to destroy, the chaos they thrived on. They now navigate the world exposed, whispers following them where they go. Life has a strange, ironic justice. I don't need revenge anymore. Reality did it for me. Sitting on the balcony one last time, the city lights glowing like embers below, I breathe in the crisp evening air and smile softly. I am free, stronger, and wiser. The storm is over, and I have emerged whole. But the memory of the betrayal, the lessons learned, and the quiet satisfaction of justice will stay with me forever. A reminder that even the deepest wounds can forge the strongest armor.